Welcome to the Power Couples Rock podcast. This is your power boost for the day. My name is Chris. Thank you again for welcoming us into your ears. I am here with my most favorite people in the universe. I'm going to introduce first my most beautiful wife, Sonia. Please say hello to the people.
Hello, people. So glad you're here.
And my most favorite couple in the universe, my most favorite power couple in the universe, Carlos and Catherine Green. What is up?
Oh, what's up, power couples?
What's up, power couples? We're here with our favorite couple in the universe.
Yes, it's time to rock.
On our last Power Boost, we talked about the hour of power. And after we were done with that Power Boost, we said, you know what? We need to talk more about it because it spawned more questions. We heard feedback from people, and these are things that we need to talk about because we feel like you need that boost for the hour of power. There's things we have to talk about. Number one, just as a reminder, with your hour of power, there's 3 C's you have to remember. It's consistency, it is connection, and it is communication. So those are the 3 C's. You have to remember the 6 core areas. Carlos, Catherine. Carlos, you give me 3. Catherine, you give me 3.
Faith, family, finance.
Future, fitness, fun.
That is your agenda. And Sonia, give us some maybe questions in troubleshooting through an hour of power. So if a power couple's out there and they're saying, okay, this is great, I want to do this, but what about this, and what about this, and what about this?
So my first question is, what happens if you guys get into a disagreement about something? Do you take the time during this hour of power to discuss that and kind of disregard everything else within that hour, or do you talk about that separately at a different time?
Okay, I'll start and just interject about my thoughts about your hour of power. You start with subjects or things that are very safe and doesn't cause a lot of friction first. So if we're using the 6 core areas, for instance. So if you're using the 6 core area, maybe start with, if your faith is very easy to start with, then start with that one.
There you go.
And then break
start with
that
some
down.
softballs.
That's right. And so until you're able to move, and you may not be able to go through all 6 of those areas in one time. You have to decide on, because what you want to do is you want to create a lot of tension. You want to be able to have a common goal. Understand what your goal is. It is to move your family forward. It's to be consistent. It's to connect with each other. And it is to communicate, to have a better open communication and dialogue. That's the whole purpose of having your hour of power. So that would be one thing that I would recommend, is just starting with some of your soft issues.
Wouldn't you
first.
think that and I know you mentioned this on the last Power Boost, if you start with prayer, that kind of sets the table for everything. It sets the tone, and hopefully you don't get into a tenuous situation where you're arguing. And couples, you know each other's buttons, right? And you know what things you should avoid, and probably what you shouldn't do to keep this meeting as productive as it could be for your marriage in general, which is the most important thing for you. So don't start saying things that may send things the wrong way, and maybe cover those areas that you think would go a lot more smoothly, and especially maybe initially, right? That you should keep it somewhat light so that you can power through it, no pun intended, to power through it and get through that meeting, and then it can get deeper and a little bit more meaty as the other meetings happen. Would that be safe to say? Is that?
I would say so. And again, Catherine and I have been doing this for 10 to 15 years. So we've got some traction and some experience. But when we first started, we did use those softballs. We always bookend our hour of power with prayer on the front end, prayer on the back end.
Awesome. Okay.
And so when we're looking at our hour of power, understanding this is an opportunity for you to dream. You're talking about your goals as a couple, your aspirations, what you want to accomplish in life together. So it should start off as a very, very positive conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
And so understanding where you all are today and where you want to be just a year from now. So set that short-term goal and say, here's where we would like to end up. And like Catherine said, you may not get through all 6 core areas. Just start off with 2 or 3 of them, and then only set 2 or 3 goals in each one of those core areas.
Okay.
That way it's not overwhelming, but it keeps you focused. And I think our biggest thing is when we're talking through this, our biggest challenge that we have in this process is to remain consistent and be intentional about it. Because you can do it for the first month, 2 months, 3 months, look good. But when you're starting to work on the 12th month, and the 36th month and the 48th month, that's when it can start to get a bit challenging, because you're like, well, it's okay. We don't have to do it this month. And whenever we miss a month, because we haven't been perfect, but whenever we miss a month, we can tell.
Or we'll stop in the middle of the month. I said,
we know.
We needed to do this.
Yeah.
We had kept saying, okay, we're going to do it. And then something comes up. And I said, no, we just said, we got to do it because that's what we agreed to do. And
I liked something that you said in the last Power Boost that was a part of the Hour of Power is if you think about it from progress and not perfection, right? Where it's not about him or her being perfect for you, or him or her being perfect, or this marriage being perfect. Let's work on these core areas, and let's work on moving forward. Let's work on getting progress in each one of these areas. And I have a question too. And Sonia, I'm sorry, I know you have another one.
No, I think my other one was answered. It was about, are there anything's off limits as to what you talk about. But I think you addressed that, meaning...
Well, let's talk about that. We can actually talk about
okay.
what's off limits.
Okay.
I love that. For us, off limits, but we've already set what we call our non-negotiables anyway. And we've talked a lot about that. So our non-negotiables are, we're not going to talk about anything that's going to cause strife in our relationship. The D word. We don't talk about divorce. That's not a goal. That's not an aspiration for us. So that's off the table. We're talking about building a life together. So it's going to be those things that's going to enhance our relationship, that's going to put us in a position to win. And so if there's anything that you all are wanting to discuss that's going to be contentious, I would probably not put that as part of the initial.
One of the things that just kind of come to mind was just parenting. You know, parenting and the way you parent your children can be sometimes very difficult, and maybe the two of you guys are not on the same page. So parenting would probably not be one of those things that you would bring to the table to talk about during. That's I guess that was my reason for asking the question, is if you know that it's you don't agree on those things, do you talk about them anyway underneath family?
We do talk about them underneath family. So the way that we would phrase that parenting situation is not in how we would parent them, but what are our goals and aspirations and dreams for our kids?
Okay.
So then we're looking, so if it's to get their driver's license over the next 6 months, how do we work as a team to make sure that they get their driver's license by going to the school? Let's set up some rhythms that they can go out and we can teach them how to drive. Let's making sure that they're studying for the test. So that's all positive that you can work together. And then when you invite your children into that goal planning process, then it becomes something that you're doing as a team.
So an hour of power is not necessarily always just individually the two of you. If you're talking about family and you're covering that in an hour of power, you're pulling in your boys. Or one boy if you're talking about a goal for him.
Well, what we do is we have our own hour of power, and because we're discussing the implementation or the execution of it, then we talk about when do we actually have that conversation with our son. So then we can go in together and say, here's what we got. We want you to get your license. Here's some things that we think you can do to make sure you're successful in that. What else do you have? And then we all start working toward that
together.
I love that. And then he knows, him or her, if you have daughters out there, you're doing the same thing. They know you're on their team.
Yes. That's correct.
This is a team effort. This is not just like, here you go, you're on your own, or your mother's going to do this with you, or your father's going to do this with you. This is a team effort.
That's
you guys
correct.
are working together.
That's right. And I love what Carlos said. You two meet first, because what you don't want to do is not have a discussion and you go in and bring them in, and then you two say, well, if we'd have talked about that before we came in, and they're seeing you all confused. I mean, just think about your job. If you hadn't discussed something with your client or your boss before you went into the meeting, and you guys go in there and you're on different pages, you may lose that client.
Correct.
Exactly.
So just take
That's a perfect analogy. I love that. Okay.
And here's the other thing that I have is that we meet in our bedroom when we have our hour of power normally. But we've met at coffee shops. We've met at bookstores. We've actually met when we were driving to another event out of town and said, that gives us some great space that we can have this discussion.
That's that connection part.
That's that connection part. So it doesn't always have to be in the same place that you meet, but just make sure that you meet, whatever the rhythm is. And I think that that's been really cool for us.
That is great.
That's awesome. So power couples, this has been your power boost for the day. Once again, this is your hour of power. Let's call it your troubleshooting guide to the hour of power.
Yes.
Your power boost. So power couples, let's get
Powered up.